The waiter noticed the men before the billionaire ever did. 4 of them. Sitting apart. Too quiet. Too still. The kind of stillness that doesn't belong in a crowded restaurant. And in the next few seconds, a single dad with shaking hands would make a choice that would change every life in that room, including his own, forever. The restaurant glittered with polished marble floors, soft piano music, and the kind of calm only money could buy. Evan Cole, a billionaire CEO known for buying failing companies and turning them into empires, sat alone at a corner table. No bodyguards. No entourage. Just a black suit, tired eyes, and a man who wanted one peaceful dinner after another brutal week of boardroom wars. He didn't notice the 4 men because powerful men often forget what danger looks like when it doesn't announce itself loudly. Daniel Reyes noticed everything. He had to. As a single father raising an 8-year-old daughter on tips and double shifts, awareness wasn't optional, it was survival. He had learned to read people the way others read menus. The way a man clenched his jaw when angry. The way eyes darted before violence. The way silence could scream. As Daniel moved between tables, refilling glasses and forcing polite smiles, his gaze kept returning to the 4 men. They weren't eating. They weren't talking. Each had ordered water. Each had one hand hidden beneath the table. And each kept glancing, not staring, at Evan Cole. Daniel's heart started pounding. He told himself he was imagining things. He needed this job. One wrong accusation, one wrong move, and he'd be fired. Fired meant rent unpaid. Rent unpaid meant his daughter Sophia sleeping in the car again. He swallowed and kept walking, but then he saw it. One of the men subtly nodding. Another shifting his chair back. A third reaching inside his jacket. Time slowed. Daniel's mind flashed to Sophia's face that morning as she hugged him goodbye. "Come home safe, Daddy," she'd said, like she always did. He thought of the nights she pretended not to hear her stomach growl when tips were bad. He thought of how unfair it would be to stay silent when he knew something was wrong. The first man stood up. Daniel didn't think. He acted. He dropped the tray, glasses shattered. Water exploded across the marble floor. Every head turned. Conversations stopped. The piano faltered. "I'm so sorry," Daniel shouted, stumbling forward as if clumsy, crashing directly into the table of the 4 men. His body slammed into one of them, knocking the chair sideways. A metallic clatter hit the floor, a gun sliding into view. Chaos erupted, people screamed. Chairs scraped. Someone yelled, "Gun!" The 4 men sprang up, but now their cover was gone. Evan Cole finally understood what was happening, his eyes wide as security guards from the entrance rushed forward. One of the attackers tried to grab Daniel, fury blazing in his eyes, but Daniel didn't back away. He stood there, shaking, arms spread, blocking them for just a second longer than logic said he should. That second was everything. Security tackled 2 men. A third ran but was stopped by a patron who slammed a chair into his legs. The 4th froze, hands up, realization dawning that the plan was over. Police arrived within minutes. Sirens drowned out the screams. Patrons were evacuated. Statements were taken. Daniel sat on the curb outside, hands trembling, uniform soaked, waiting for someone to tell him he was fired, or worse. Instead, Evan Cole walked toward him. Up close, the billionaire looked less invincible. More human. His voice cracked when he spoke. "You saved my life." Daniel tried to laugh it off. "I just dropped a tray, sir." Evan shook his head slowly. "No. You chose to see. And you chose to act." The next morning, the story was everywhere. Waiter thwarts assassination attempt. News vans parked outside the restaurant. Daniel couldn't escape the attention even if he wanted to. But fame doesn't pay bills, not immediately, and when the manager pulled him aside, Daniel braced himself. "You're suspended," the manager said quietly. "Not because you did anything wrong, but because corporate doesn't like attention." Daniel nodded, defeated. He went home and hugged Sophia tightly, telling her everything would be okay even though he wasn't sure it would. 2 days later, a black car pulled up outside his small apartment. Evan Cole stepped out. He sat at Daniel's kitchen table, across from a man who still wore a diner uniform because he couldn't afford anything else. Evan explained everything. The attack wasn't random. It was corporate sabotage. Powerful people wanted him gone. And Daniel had destroyed their plan. "I don't believe in accidents," Evan said. "I believe in character." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer, not charity, not pity, a job. Security consultant. Training staff awareness. A salary that made Daniel's breath catch. Health insurance. Flexible hours. Enough to give Sophia the life she deserved. "I'm not a hero," Daniel whispered. Evan smiled softly. "No. You're a father who refused to look away." Years later, Daniel would still serve tables, but now it was at charity events he helped fund. Sophia would tell her friends that her dad once stopped bad men by spilling water. And Evan Cole would often say, in interviews and boardrooms, that the most powerful person he ever met wasn't a billionaire, it was a waiter who chose courage over fear for just a few seconds, and those seconds proved that even in a world ruled by money and power, it's still ordinary people who decide how stories. The first knock on the door sounded like trouble. Daniel froze mid-step, his daughter's laughter still echoing from the living room where Sophia sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring with broken crayons. For a brief, irrational moment, he wondered if the men from the restaurant had somehow slipped through the cracks of the law and found him. He took a breath, smoothed his wrinkled shirt, and opened the door to a sight that didn't belong in the narrow hallway of his aging apartment building. 2 men in tailored suits standing beside a sleek black car, and between them, Evan Cole himself. The billionaire CEO looked smaller somehow, not in presence but in posture, like a man who had been carrying the weight of survival on his shoulders and was finally allowing it to show. Daniel didn't know what to say. Evan spoke first, his voice calm but heavy with something deeper than gratitude. "I didn't want to send a lawyer," he said. "This deserved to be said face to face." Daniel stepped aside, still unsure whether this visit would change his life for better or worse. Sophia peeked from behind the couch, eyes wide at the stranger who didn't look like anyone she'd ever seen in her world of second-hand furniture and late dinners. Evan noticed her immediately. He smiled, not the polished smile of press conferences, but the careful one of a man who knew he was standing inside someone else's life. They sat at the small kitchen table, knees nearly touching because there wasn't space for distance. Evan explained what the news hadn't, how the attack had been planned for months, how trusted executives had turned into enemies, how money could buy silence but not loyalty. "I've spent my life believing control was the same thing as safety," Evan said quietly. "You proved me wrong in seconds." Daniel listened, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles hurt. He still couldn't believe any of this was real. He told Evan the truth, that he almost didn't act, that fear had nearly won, that all he could think about was his daughter and the chance he might not come home that night. Evan didn't interrupt. When Daniel finished, Evan nodded slowly. "That fear," he said, "is exactly why what you did mattered." The offer Evan made wasn't wrapped in charity. There was no savior tone, no camera-ready speech. It was opportunity built on respect. Training staff. Risk awareness. A role created because someone finally understood that danger is often seen first by people the world ignores. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked at Sophia, who had returned to her coloring, humming softly, unaware that her future was balancing on her father's next words. "I don't want her growing up thinking bravery means being fearless," Daniel said. "I want her to know it means being scared and choosing to act anyway." Evan smiled, eyes damp. Then we believe in the same lesson. The transition wasn't instant or easy. Daniel stumbled in meetings where everyone wore confidence like armor. He questioned whether he belonged in rooms where a handshake could cost millions. But he learned, the same way he always had, by watching, listening, and caring more than expected. His insight saved companies money. His instincts prevented incidents no spreadsheet could predict. Slowly, people stopped seeing him as the waiter and started seeing him as the man who noticed what others missed. One evening, months later, Daniel returned to the restaurant, not in uniform, but in a simple suit that still felt strange on his shoulders. The manager who once suspended him avoided his eyes. The tables looked smaller now, the danger quieter, almost embarrassed. Daniel stood where he had dropped the tray and realized something had shifted forever. Not the room. Him. He hadn't become powerful because of money or position. He had become powerful because he trusted his conscience when it spoke. Years passed. Sophia grew taller. Her crayons were replaced with books, her questions sharper and braver. When she asked her father why he acted that night, Daniel never talked about the billionaire or the job. He talked about responsibility. About how every ordinary moment holds the chance to become extraordinary if you refuse to look away. And somewhere in a city full of towering offices and guarded doors, Evan Cole often repeated the same truth, that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't violence, but indifference. The story never ended with headlines or awards. It ended quietly, the way the best stories do, with a father walking home at dusk, a daughter holding his hand, and the unshakable knowledge that one brave choice, made in seconds, can echo for a lifetime.